Welcome to the Misophonia podcast. This is episode 206. My name's Adil Ahmad, and I have Misophonia. This is a cool episode because I have two guests, Tressi and Brooklyn. Brooklyn you may know as Brooklyn Dish, who is a Misophonia coach and has all kinds of resources on her website, brooklyndish.com, and there's a link in the show notes. Tressi has worked with Brooklyn and has also published a book of her own, which is a fictionalization of many of her experiences living with misophonia. Both guests discuss the challenges they faced growing up, the lack of understanding and resources available, and how they eventually connected through a shared Facebook group. They talk about misophonia as not a defect, but a trait that can be managed through various strategies, including reprogramming the mind and fostering connections with others who share similar experiences. Both of them have seen their misophonia greatly reduced. We also touch on the skepticism surrounding alternative therapies. They discuss the role of meditation as well, and the impact of childhood experiences, and the importance of understanding and advocating for misophonia as a distinct condition. After the show, let me know what you think. You can reach out by email at hello@misophoniapodcast.com or hit me up on Instagram or Facebook at Misophonia Podcast. By the way, please head over, leave a quick rating or review wherever you listen to the show. It really helps drive us up in those algorithms. A few announcements. This podcast just hit 5 years. We started 5 years ago, and I just want to remind folks that anyone can sign up to be a guest. Just head to misophoniapodcast.com and click the Be a Guest link. Misophonia.shop is open. I recently relaunched the merch shop where you can find shirts, hats, AirPods cases, and lots of things related to the podcast. It's just getting started, so watch that space for a lot more. All profits go to support this podcast. The recording and hosting fees, 5% also goes to support research via SoQuiet, and the rest goes towards some special projects, which I'll be talking about soon. And also, of course, thanks for the incredible ongoing support of our Patreon supporters. You can contribute by heading to patreon.com/Misophonia Podcast. All right, without further ado, here's my conversation with Tressi and Brooklyn. Okay, well, I'm very excited. Tressi and Brooklyn, thanks for coming on the podcast. Great to have you here.
Good to be
Thanks
here.
for having me.
So yeah, these two people or three people podcasts that kind of go back and forth. Maybe just randomly start with Tressi, because I think you reached out first. Do you want to tell us a little bit about where, roughly where you're located and kind of what you do, and then we'll obviously get into the details and stuff later.
Sure. So I actually am in North Dakota right now. I've spent some real time in Wyoming as well, but am spending time with family and was finishing up my books and getting them published and looking forward to putting them out there for others to read.
Awesome. Yeah, no, excited to hear about those. And Brooklyn, for anyone who doesn't know you, want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so as you said, I'm Brooklyn. That's the obvious part. I am in Fort Wayne, Indiana, so northeast Indiana, a couple hours north of Indy. Not that you need that specific information, but that's where I'm at. And I am a coach for people who experience misophonia, which is something that I struggled with for about 20 years.
Awesome. Yeah, well, I would love to hear about that as well. But yeah, maybe Tressi, do you want to? I would love to get to the book, but maybe people, would love to hear the backstory. Like when did you first start experiencing misophonia, and tell us kind of how you got to this place.
Okay. I do remember being at our beautiful, well set dining room table with a very hearty home cooked meal that my mother would make and have all of us participate in, um, you know, maybe prepping a little bit, but more so setting the table and just being family and coming together. And, it's supposed to be such a wonderful time where you pray together and blessing your meal and blessing one another and being thankful for everything that you've been given, and then enjoy this fine cooked meal. And I just I didn't understand what was happening to me at that time. It was really, really confusing. But I I was 9. The earliest memory, was me feeling like I had all this boiling anger just coming up inside of me, and I would just spew at family for making mouth noises and scraping their teeth and just all kinds of things. And I didn't understand it. And I would be in a fit of tears and so distraught and angry. And I mean, I was a sweet, quiet, shy little gal. And so I was confused why this would even happen to me either. And I thought I was pretty awful. So I spent a lot of time having meals in the bathroom in mornings because I would be getting ready. And I think my family just learned to bring me my meal, and I would just get ready in front of the mirror in my bathroom just to have quiet, peaceful time and
And so
deal
did
with
they?
whatever that was I was going through.
Yeah. So it seems like they accommodated a little bit, or at least, what was the kind of their reaction other than um, giving you the food in the bathroom or whatever? Did they? Was there
Yeah.
fights, or was it just a little bit
Yes,
more?
there
Yeah.
was. I
Yeah.
mean, I grew up with 2 brothers, and I was a middle child, and I was close in age with my oldest. And I mean, he didn't know, and siblings have rivalries, and people just don't understand. And I didn't know what was going on, and my folks certainly didn't know either. But they were just trying to, squelch anything that might be less than appropriate. And so I think a lot of times I got squelched, but
Yeah.
it was not anything that I understood or they understood to the point that we would know. I lived my life just kind of going around the outer edges of things socially because I was so triggered by so much. And um, gum chewing and popping was the biggest one, and popcorn, and I mean, just all the things that I've read about and listened to on the other podcasts. And I just didn't know. It didn't make me feel good. But by the time I was in my 30s and I had I decided to get a master's degree. I really searched. I researched so much over the years, but really did during graduate school, trying to find what my condition was called. I was probably one of the um, less than fortunates who never really learned what my condition was called until I was about 47, I think. And I was at a basketball game where I was being a parent and doing what all parents do at a basketball game, watching your kids and trying to enjoy that. And the auditorium was just miserable. And, the quiet hallways or quieter hallways were easier, but then that's also where everybody ate and chewed and popped gum. And I had another mom, basketball mom, kind of get upset with a boy on the team. I think it might have even been her own son for popping his gum or something like that. And
Oh, okay.
that's when I first learned that somebody else really was driven batty by that. I mean, to a degree that I completely understood without her saying that this, whatever this was not just me. I don't know. It was just an understanding. But she said, there's a name for this. I'll let you know. And she did send me a text sometime later and told me, but that was the first I'd learned about it. But I really kind of struggled with my health for a little bit with thyroid disease, Hashimoto's, fluctuating results between hypo and hyperthyroidism, which is Hashimoto's. And I've had that since I was 27. So, you know, I don't know, too many years to count. Anyway, I I just didn't feel well, and everything was heightened, and so was this sensitivity to
Mm.
noise and mouth noises. And so I really struggled, and I more or less took myself out of my um, out of my element. Gave myself some time away to try to figure out what was wrong with me. Um, did quite a bit of research. I mean, I always researched. I've always been a researcher. I've always been a journaler and a writer. But I just really needed to find out what was wrong with me. And I didn't do that right away because I really, truly started to shut down. I didn't feel well. And it took a while. Anyway,
Yeah.
Um, I had always wanted to write a book, and I think that divine intervention played a part, and it ended up being a book about many things. But Ms. was the driving force.
Hmm.
And I'm satisfied and very proud of the book I've written, Guided by True North, Navigating Life's Journey with Misophonia. I did fictionalize it. There's a lot of truth in there as well. But I also wanted to give myself something that I wish there had been when I was a 9-year-old girl grappling with this, and we didn't know what it was. And I struggled at school. When I was in school, I didn't tell anybody, I just closed down. We'd
Yeah,
take
I was going to ask, did
state
you talk to anybody or even without
state
knowing the
tests.
name? Yeah, gotcha. Okay.
No, never.
Mhm.
We took state tests, and I would just crawl into my turtle shell. As a matter of fact, I was that kid that just went through and I just colored in all of the circles. And I'm sure
Right.
that when my parents went to parent teacher conferences, that they were being told that I was academically something less than what I was. I knew that I had intelligence. I just truly could not stand the swish of pants, or actually, I went to a Catholic school, of dresses or the boys' slacks, pencil sharpening. I mean, it went from snack time to all of those extra things, bags, it just, so I shut down. So I really, looking back, thought, man, I wish that there had been school counselors at that time, that I had somebody that I could have gone and talked to. I'm a school counselor. That's what I did in my professional working life. And um, I wish that there had been someone like me that I could have talked to. There wasn't. I didn't know how to express myself. I just clammed up and went into my shell. And I really was never showing success in the manner that I could have, if probably I would have talked more about what was going on, or my parents would have known more. But, they did lots of great things for me. I'm not condemning what they didn't do so much as want to give praise to them for all the things that they did right. But misophonia um, was crippling for me. And I certainly didn't want to lash out at school, but, you know, probably way back then started some of that inner turmoil and that negative self-talk that
Hmm.
just went on for a lifetime. And I never wanted to be that ever. And so when that started to come back after decades of my adulthood, of realizing that I had worked on that in every way that I could, from being nurtured to be positive, to doing positive things with people, or being kind and being a good Christian, to educating myself in those areas, and even going through to be a school counselor to help others, and just being the nurturing person I am. I just realized when my health failed, that, and the misophonia had taken over and made me so miserable, that I needed to do something. I was low. It was bad. It had affected the trajectory of my life. And I can't say that that was for the first time, but it definitely changed the trajectory of my life in a big way, with my family. It separated me from my family.
Your immediate
Um,
family or
yes,
your
my
yeah,
everybody really. I
gotcha.
I I ran. I ran.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, I really didn't know for sure what all was going on with me. And I thought misophonia might be something even more serious than what it is. Honestly,
Hmm.
this is doable. I can do this. But I wondered if, at the core of me, I thought something fundamentally was extremely wrong with me, even more
I
than
see.
what misophonia is.
Gotcha.
And I
Okay.
didn't want a misdiagnosis. I wanted to know truly what was my issue. So I
Gotcha.
researched.
And where did that let you? Sounds like it led you to
It led me to
Brooklyn's
Brooklyn.
practice. Yeah.
It
And
led
there's
me to
other stuff I
Brooklyn.
want to ask about your past, but I also don't want to yeah, miss this opportunity now that you're both here, is to talk about
Yeah,
kind of like how
absolutely.
how did you connect, and maybe we'll kind of walk through some of the things you guys did together, and then we can also hear about Brooklyn's background as
Yes,
well.
absolutely.
Yeah, well,
Absolutely.
I can. Do you want me to share how we connected?
Yes, please do, because
Okay.
I think you can help round that out.
Okay. So I guess, okay, I can give like a little background of my experience with misophonia, and that will lead me to how I connected
Yeah,
with Tressi. So it all kind of goes
sounds
together.
great. Yeah.
But Tressi and I have a lot of similarities in our stories. It's kind of amazing that we did connect, and that she was one of the first people that ever trusted me to help her with her misophonia, which I'll get to that later. But we do have a lot of similarities. Like for me, it started. who knows when it actually started, my experience with misophonia. I don't have a great memory from childhood. Like anything before 19, I feel like is like, phew, gone, except for like
Mm.
some things here and there. But I do know that it was probably around the age of like 7. And I think one of the first things that people noticed was the like certain noises that people would make when singing in the car. I would like be asking, like, can you stop singing? Can you
Car
stop
is not a
doing
good
that?
place for misophones.
Right,
No,
right.
not at
But
all.
my family was like, well, you can sing. Why is that not a problem? And we can't do it. And I didn't
Mm.
have an answer for it. I was so young. And I actually just met with my grandma for lunch a couple days ago, and she reminded me that apparently when I was like 7 or 9 years old, my sister would be playing music in her room, and there was like a whole closet in between our rooms, but it would still drive me absolutely nuts, and I would get so angry. So to hear that from her was interesting as well. And
Mhm.
again, also the dinner table was a huge issue, like just
Mhm.
because we
Yeah.
used to eat together as a family, and that ended pretty quickly, at least for me, after this kind of set in.
Yeah.
But misophonia really was, like Tressi said, it was incredibly debilitating for me as well. Like it's a miracle, I think, that I'm alive and here today. It was especially really challenging during high school, really challenging during college. Like getting my bachelor's degree was like the coolest thing ever because I thought I was going to have to drop out. So
Mhm.
it was very debilitating. And even when I was growing up in the 90s, early 2000s, I was born in 96, there weren't really many resources. And at the time, it was still called selective sound sensitivity syndrome, which is an interesting name for people who are like sensitive to sound to have all those S's in there.
Right.
But that's what
I
it was
didn't think
called.
about that, but yes,
Yeah.
yes, you're right.
And so I didn't even find out it was called misophonia until much later. But skipping ahead a little bit, so obviously I did a ton of work to what I call eliminate it. I can talk about that later, what that means for
Mhm.
myself. And then I thought, okay, this is really amazing. If I can do this for myself, can I help other people? So kind of what Tressi said, I wanted to offer what wasn't there when I was
Mhm.
struggling.
Yeah.
And so I actually went into a Facebook group that I think we're all a part of. And I basically was like, hey, does anyone want to work with me? Like, I tried these things and I'm so much better. Like, my misophonia is gone. This is amazing. Does anyone want to work with me? The response was not ideal. There was a lot of skepticism, a
That's
lot
the
of,
misophonia world. You know how it is.
yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. People were like, this isn't like, this must be some kind of scam. Who are you
Yeah.
to offer? Like, all the things, which I get because, especially if you experience misophonia, you've likely tried a lot of things that haven't worked. So I did, on one hand, understand it. And on the other hand, I was like, I really just want to help people. And it was really difficult. Like, I went offline for like 2 weeks. I took all of my stuff down. I was basically hiding. And I had a
Mhm.
couple people, Tressi being one of them, who reached out to me and was like, hey, I'm willing to work with you. And that trust was like, I did not take that for granted. So she was truly one of the first people to ever work with me. And she is the reason that I have been able to continue doing this work, to get better, to be more confident in helping people. So it was really through
Mhm.
a Facebook group is how we first connected. Very long story short.
Yeah. No, I mean people crap on Facebook, but when the stories like this happen, I think that makes it all worthwhile. Yeah, there's some big Facebook groups and yeah, like some of them are so ranty that it's hard to keep track of what's going on. But it's that's great. Little golden nuggets kind of happen.
Hmm.
So yeah, you met and you were kind of reinvigorated. What did you do next? You were coming back from your little detox, I'll call it, but like, did you come up with a new plan, new kind of curriculum, and how did that work? And was it successful? Sounds like there was some success.
So that is also a good question. So what I have now, I approach like misophonia relief now in like 3 phases, or I call it 3 keys to misophonia relief. I like metaphors, but that system was developed through working with people one on one first. So again, Tressi was a big part of helping me figure out, okay, I can do this for you one on one, but I only have
Mm-hmm.
so much time. I'm only one person. So if I want to help as many people as possible, yes, I can work with people one on one, but can I also put this into
Scale it.
something where I can help
Yeah.
multiple people at a time? So I have the program that I have now. And a big
Mm-hmm.
part of that was developed through my own experience and working with one on one clients early on. But meeting with Tressi, it was a lot of just unconscious reprogramming. So I feel like I'm skipping over a lot, like how I think of
No, it's okay.
misophonia and all the things, but
I'll remember some of these terms because, yeah, I mean, right, because you're talking about some stuff that I think we've talked about with some common friends in terms of like
yeah.
reprogramming memories, and then maybe talking about where that comes from. So yeah, we'll move around. Don't worry, just go natural, and we'll
Well,
get there.
yeah,
We
I
can.
would I would say it's a lot of just so how I see misophonia is I don't even really believe that you need a cure per se. I know a lot of people are like scared of the word cure, but personally, I don't. When I work with clients, the first thing that I like to establish is that there really isn't anything wrong with you or me or anyone else who experiences it. As human beings, we all have patterns and programmings, and some of them are really useful and
Hmm.
some of them aren't. And so it's just a pattern that your mind has developed, is how I see it. So that's where the unconscious reprogramming comes in, is how can we change the relationship that your mind has with these noises? And that's for me, it starts with actually like the first key, I call it, is like shifting your perspective. So actually helping people see or believe that change is possible, because if you've already decided for yourself that there's nothing you can do and you're stuck with it forever, then there's nothing you can do and you're stuck with it forever. It's like a self fulfilling prophecy. So that's the first thing
Mhm.
that I work on, is kind of changing that belief system. And then we go into the actual rewiring work. So, kind of reprogramming the meaning that your mind has attached to the noises. And then we kind of wrap up with how can we process and navigate the really strong emotions that accompany misophonia in a way that's more useful. So that was a lot of the work that I did with Tressi, with other one-on-one clients, and that's what I do with people today too.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, yeah. When you said a number of those steps, yeah. First of all, instilling that yeah you can do something, and then changing trying to change the meaning behind um what you're how you're interpreting the sounds. I guess are these some of these sound kind of like overlap a little bit with like CBT in terms of like changing your perspective on the sounds that you're listening to. Um, are these skills that you do in the moment every time that you're hearing triggers, or is it something that over time, kind of like you don't have to do, and it's kind of like instinctual, and
Ooh,
suddenly
yeah.
misophonia is not a thing. So I'm kind of curious because sometimes when people hear about these kinds of skills, they're thinking, "Oh, do I have to like stop and think about these skills every time, or has it really kind of is it part of the is the name reprogramming really what's happening here, and in your view?"
That is also a really good question. So I would also be curious to hear Tressi's answer to
Oh
this,
yeah,
because
sure, yeah, of course, yeah.
we've worked together. So I'd be curious to hear how she approaches it now. For me in the beginning, there were some intentional steps. So if we want to change something, like I see misophonia as operating in the unconscious mind, and then we experience it consciously at the conscious level. So if we want to change something that's happening unconsciously, first it helps to be aware of it. Like, how are you going to change something if you don't even know it's happening? So
Right.
I think at first it can take some intentional effort, and some of the strategies and techniques that I do with people, they are intentional in the moment. And also as you continue to like build that new neural pathway, it almost starts to become second nature. So for me,
Hmm.
if I hear a noise, because people ask me like, are you not bothered by anything? Well, no. Most people who don't experience misophonia, there are still noises that bother them from time to time. So there are still some noises that annoy me, but it's not invoking rage,
Fight or
panic,
flight, yeah.
anxiety. Right. It's more of just like, oh, that's kind of annoying. So there are some noises where maybe I will intentionally use a technique or a strategy that I know works, but a lot of times it's become second nature. Like I'm not noticing those sounds anymore, or I notice them but it's just a sound. But I'd be
Right.
curious to hear Tressi's answer to that as well.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I'm going to go back to when I was young. And I remember when the noises bothered me, I would find myself kind of spacing out and looking out the window, or just really trying to remove myself from where I was at. Or I would count
Mm.
things like crazy. Yeah, that was a thing. And I would count forwards and I would count backwards. And when Brooklyn came up with some strategies, one of them was a counting trick.
Gotcha.
And I
Okay.
thought, sounds familiar. Anyway, obviously, I'm not the child that I was then. And now I've had hypnotherapy and rapid response therapy and NLP and lots of other things to try to lessen what my response or my reactive response was. I feel as though I went into this very open-minded. I wanted something, I just wanted it to lessen. I didn't want it to be so intense. I mean, on a scale of 0 to 10, 10's pretty intense. Can make you
Mm-hmm.
downright miserable, and that I was. So I'm a 2, and I'm a 2 because of the RT, the NLP, and the hypnosis, and all of that, and meditation. But I would give major, major credit to meditation. I meditate morning and night,
Mm-hmm.
and I have, if need be, done that for myself during the day. I feel like um, those neural pathways from the modalities that Brooklyn has used for me have really created a different sense within me with those neural pathways. And I feel like even when I hear the sounds that triggered me the most, the intensity is so not there. It is so low. It's that 2 on that scale. And it's just an awareness.
Yeah.
So um, just this week, I've had 2. Um,
Kill someone.
No, I didn't want to kill her. I absolutely love my mom. I adore her. I
Okay.
never had a sister. My mom is it, and all my adopted daughters that I adopt everywhere I go. But anyway, including Brooklyn. But anyway, she gives me a thumbs up. She accepts the role. Anyway, I just my mom slurps tea, and it used to send me through the roof. She's not doing anything wrong. She's enjoying her tea or her coffee, and honestly, I can just say I heard that, and I can turn around and I can walk elsewhere, but it doesn't have the same effect. I just have an awareness. Um, do I like it? No, but do I have to kind of backtread and say to myself, that doesn't hurt. It doesn't hurt me. It doesn't make me want to run. Um, but I'm not going to lie. Old habits do die hard. And that's been the hardest thing for me at times is I'm used to walking off.
That
So
particular trigger you're
sometimes,
talking about. The
yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
the tea slurpee. So, and then another one, was just my son had gum the other day. I never took gum away from my kids or popcorn or the things that bothered me. I just explained to them when I didn't know how much they bothered me, and please enjoy them, but do it away from me, because I understood that that's just people chew gum. They pop bubbles. They have that. I just asked that they didn't. But anyway, um, I was helping him with a computer project last night, and he had gum, and I did. I heard it. Um,
How did you
but no,
feel
I
then?
didn't.
You didn't have to run or
I didn't.
reach
But
into
it
his
does
throat.
give me pause.
Yeah, yeah.
Reach into his throat. Did not reach into his throat. I love that kid with my whole heart. I would never want to reach into his throat. But I hear you. I might have wanted to my brothers back in the day.
Right, right. But that's a big change. I mean, that's a big shift. Yeah.
It is a big shift. So I honestly really just had to focus on what it meant, and did it mean anything? And it didn't. And so all is well. With my mom, I actually had a conversation about it afterwards. And it's not to make her feel bad, but just because I know I can openly talk to her about how it was and how much better it is. But to say it's cured, it's not cured. But what it is it's a 2 when it
Yeah.
used to be a 10. That is huge. And that's an improvement in life. It's not debilitating anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just grateful. I'm just grateful. And I wanted to say, and I never finished that before. I just want to say really quick. When I first met Brooklyn, I told her that I was looking at writing a book, and I ended up writing 2. I wrote the children's book also. And that was for early childhood awareness. The Cousins Challenge, Overcoming Obstacles Together, is my children's book. And it's a book that I would have loved to have been out there for me, for Brooklyn,
Mm-hmm.
for any other misophone that may just
For
need some
me,
kind of acknowledgement. For you, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to exclude you, not at all. For you, I know I love it. But as a school or a school teacher and school counselor, you know, I was all about reading about special needs of
mhm.
individuals. I wanted there just to be acceptance for diversity. And so, anyway, super excited about that book being written too. And probably will write more about it to explain more. That's probably just barely touching it. But um, crazy as it is, Brooklyn's my main character. And yes, it's a tribute to Brooklyn. Absolutely. But like I told her when I first met her, how beautiful her name was. I never had a daughter. It's okay that I didn't have a daughter. I have two great sons, love them to pieces. But if I'd had a daughter, her name would have been Brooklyn. Now, how ironic is that Brooklyn is the practitioner coach
Mhm.
that helped me with my misophonia. So anyway, there's meaning in that for
Yeah,
me, and I love it.
maybe positive
So
karma. No,
for
that's
sure,
that's
wanted to share that.
that's great. And I actually, I mean, I also want to share. I mean, something that I think Brooklyn and you said, like, yeah, I don't agree. I don't think either that it's some like medical defect that we must, snip the wire or something.
Yeah,
It's a trait. Our brain has developed it for potentially a protective reason growing up,
protection.
or
Mhm.
and it's something that I know I've said this many times. It's something that we don't necessarily need anymore. And so, are we gonna go from 10 to 0 because we've like taken a pill or something? I don't think that that's the path
No.
that is kind of the, I don't know, best path. I don't think that's the best path forward. And I also think trying to think of it as terms of something that you just want to can shut off right away, um, takes you away from all these possible other learnings about other aspects of your life, I think. So,
Mhm.
which is a whole other dimension of Misophonia, I think. One thing, Tressi, you mentioned a bunch of acronyms, the SRT, RRT, and we'll get to hypnosis later too, because that's also a hot topic. But I'm just kind of curious. Brooklyn, you were talking about the different ways to interpret sound, but are those how does that relate to those modalities that Tressi was saying? And were there some modalities that worked more than others, or is it a soup that you kind of like draw ideas from? I'm just kind of curious how those modalities worked in your, maybe starting just kind of in your experience together.
Mhm.
Do you want me to start or do you want to start?
You can go
Okay.
right ahead. Yeah.
So like you said, it is kind of like a soup. That's an interesting way to describe it. So
Sorry, it's kind of an ironic way
no,
of mentioning soup
yes,
in
but
Misophonia.
I think it works. So if I'm working with someone, well, obviously in the program it's more generalized, but if I'm working one on one with someone, I am pulling from what's going to make the most sense. So if I'm meeting with someone, they're going to be guiding that session. So I have like those three keys or those three steps, but I'm really listening to what they're saying and they're going to guide the session. So I might be pulling from NLP or neuro linguistic programming. I might be pulling from RRT or rapid resolution therapy. Or I don't typically do just like straight hypnosis sessions with clients. I have done that. And Tressie and I did do that. But typically, what I'm doing is I'm using hypnotic language patterns in those conversations. So if I'm meeting with a client, a session really just looks like a conversation with them, but we're
Mhm.
using those modalities to engage the unconscious mind as well as the conscious mind. Because just trying to logic or reason your way out of misophonia, like if that worked, then none of us would have it. Like it would be gone.
Right.
We could just clear it and it wouldn't be an issue. So that's why using some of those language patterns, I use a lot of stories, I use a lot of metaphors. Like sometimes when I'm talking with clients, I'm like, this is going to sound weird, but just stay with me. Like I have a story about having a fist fight with a praying mantis at work one time, but like it all ties in because we're engaging the unconscious mind as well, so that it actually responds to the message that we're trying to get to it, which is, hey, these noises aren't actually a threat. Because we can just yell that, we can scream it all day long, but the unconscious mind, it's like speaking a different language. It's like if consciously we're speaking English and the subconscious mind is speaking Russian. Like
Gotcha.
it's not understanding it. So that unconscious reprogramming using the NLP, the RRT, hypnotherapy, it can be that translation device. So we can get the good news of like, hey, these things aren't actually dangerous. We can get that to the mind in a way that it understands. So I do kind of pull from different things as I'm working with people. Does that kind of answer the
Yeah.
question that you had?
Yeah. I'm curious. And then you mentioned that you're using metaphors, and also are these conversations mainly you speaking in kind of telling some story, or speaking in kind of like a hypnosis script kind of thing? Is there a common theme that you're drawing from all of these, or are there like specific things that you're saying that maybe come from each of these, or a specific message that you find has resonated a lot from each of these?
That is also a good question. So, kind of yes and no to both of those. So, like, if we were having a session, it would start off maybe similar to how this podcast did. Like, I would ask them, tell me about your experience with misophonia. And then we might dive into starting with that first key. Like, let's shift your perspective and get you to a place where you actually believe that healing from this is possible. And then we can go into the other work. So sometimes it is me like telling a story. Sometimes I'll have them close their eyes and imagine different things. If they're not visual, we'll call in other senses like sound and touch and taste and those kind
Right.
of things. Other times it's just me asking them questions. I ask a
Mm.
lot of a lot of questions, and I often have to say to
Okay.
clients, I promise this isn't a trick question. Just answer this however it makes sense,
Okay.
because I'm kind of getting an idea of their map of the world, because I don't want to
Mm.
push my views and experience of misophonia onto them. I think
Mm-hmm.
that builds a lot of trust because they don't have to waste time validating their experience to me because I've experienced it. But the way that I see it is going to be different from the way that they see it and experience it. So a lot of it is just understanding how are they operating in the world with misophonia and what's going to resonate for them to shift that. So an example of like a story that I would use is if I am trying to get someone or to help them understand that change is possible, that this is just a pattern and we can reprogram patterns that we don't like. I'll ask them, do you drive to work every day? And if you do you take the same route every day? That's a
Mm-hmm.
pattern that your mind has built so that you don't have to think about every single turn, every
Mm-hmm.
single road that you have to take. You just know, like you could be half asleep and drive yourself to work. But what if one day you're driving and there's construction and that path that you would normally take is blocked off? What are you going to do? If you want to keep your job, you're probably not going to just turn around and go home. And if you like your
Right.
car, you're probably not just going to plow straight through the construction. You will go a different way. You'll find a different route. That's an
Mm-hmm.
example of rewiring a pattern. So I tell them, I'm like, if you can do that, we can do the same thing with misophonia. It might be a
Mm-hmm.
little difficult, it might be tricky, and it might feel like it isn't possible because we've tried so many things that maybe haven't worked. But if you can do something like that, or maybe there was a food that as a kid you really didn't like for me,
Mm-hmm.
sour cream, I hated it, and now I love it. And
Mm.
that is something that changed. If I can go from hating sour cream to liking it, surely I can go from hating this noise to not caring about it. So that
Mm-hmm.
right there is an example of a story that I might share with someone,
Interesting. No, thanks for
where it might
sharing
be
that.
more of
Yeah.
like you said, close your eyes and kind of going through a hypnotic state to kind of get to those beliefs and programmings. It just kind of depends on the client themselves and what's going to make the most sense.
Yeah. Tressi, when did I guess so after these sessions, maybe when did you start to notice positive changes? And what was that path like? Was it all of a sudden after one of these stories, or was it a very gradual decline from 10 to 2?
Actually, it went pretty fast. I would say probably within 3.5 to 4 months. I, yeah, I was there. Um, I do want to add that meditation wasn't just a meditation, say, off of YouTube. They were specific to the same methodologies and ideas that Brooklyn is talking about now, where she used some NLP type concepts and hypnotic references in meditations that she shares with her clients. And to this day, those are the same ones that I'm still listening to repetitively because I feel that they're good
Mm-hmm.
maintenance.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, it just
Gotcha.
didn't take very long. And I would say, backing up, that I did notice a shift after the very first time. Like something was different. I think it could have just been relief too that somebody else was like me and that could help me. That
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
somehow it could be lessened just
Mm-hmm.
by the fact that I didn't feel alone in it,
Yeah.
um, which is a big deal, right?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Yeah, it's interesting you said maintenance, because yeah, there's somebody I just interviewed like this week who's dealing with hypnosis, and she's listening to kind of maintenance sessions of, I guess they're playbacks of her recordings with her sessions with her hypnotherapist. I'm curious, have you
Right.
um I don't know whether experimentally by accident or not, have you kind of like maybe missed some of those maintenance, and have you noticed it go up, or are you doing maintenance just because you enjoy it? I'm just kind of curious if
Yeah,
maybe
I
kind of
think
how. Yeah, go
it's
on.
my new pattern. It's
Yeah,
my
yeah,
new
yeah.
pattern. And
Hmm.
I've had success with it and I feel comforted by it. I literally go to sleep to it at night.
Hmm. Hmm.
I get up in the or wake up in the morning and it's the first thing I have in the morning and it sets a tone for the day. And it's a gratitude one that starts my day. I love that one. It's
That's
Wash
cool.
Away Misophonia meditation that I listen to at night. And there is a slew of them. Brooklyn has worked her heart out trying to provide wonderful materials that just truly are inspiring. And those are just my favorites. I've been doing this now almost 2 years and
Hmm.
I find comfort in those and that works for me. She even made me one specific to who I am.
Mm.
She did, which is a big deal. So,
I'm
and I
Mm.
listen
laughing
to that one
because
too, but that's a daytime one usually
yeah,
if I have a daytime. Yeah.
it makes me laugh because the idea of someone like listening to my voice every day when they go to sleep, it makes me laugh. But
For
in
almost
terms
two
of
years.
yes, but in
And
terms
waking
of
up to your voice.
thank you. But in terms of like maintenance work, that's a question that I get asked too. Like, do I have to do
Mhm,
maintenance? And I feel very fortunate because my maintenance is working with people. So like
Mm.
we're like
mhm,
engaging the unconscious mind. Mine is listening too. So for me, the maintenance is like getting to support other people. So I haven't
mhm.
had to like as Tressi does, like she says it's just her new pattern that she listens to certain things that are helpful. I don't know if I would have to do that or not because I've been working with people since I worked with her. And for me, that's my maintenance work. So I would be curious, like if I didn't work with people anymore, I'd be curious to see would I then want to do other things to maintain that progress. I'm not sure.
Question for you, Brooklyn.
Yes.
Since you began working with me, how many people have you worked with?
Oof, that's a good question. I don't know if I have an exact number because I've worked with people in different ways. So I've worked with like a handful of one-on-one clients. I've worked with people through, I used to do a group program. Now it's like a self-paced program. And then I also have people who download my free resources. So I kind of count it all differently. But in terms
Sure.
of people who have like worked with me in some capacity, whether it's paid, free, whatever, I think right now we're at like over 600 people. In terms of like paying clients who have either done the program or masterclass or one-on-one,
Hmm.
I don't know the exact number. I think we're shy of 100. I want to say. I'm not sure of the exact number at this time.
What's like a
Oh, that is
difference between
amazing.
yeah,
Mhm.
that's cool. What's the difference between like a master class and a one-on-one? Is that like a master class, multiple people on a Zoom call or
Yeah, it's
something?
kind of just
Or
like a fancy marketing word, basically. But
okay,
it's kind of like just basically a just like a live training that people can show up
okay.
to. So typically when I do master classes, I do them for free. I try to do at least four free trainings a year.
Hmm.
And then one of them I did it as a paid thing where I walked people through at the time I think I had 6 steps and now I've condensed it into 3 because who wants to try to go through 6 different things? So it was like walking them through those 3 steps and how they can
Yeah,
actually start to do those things on their own to
right.
get some tangible results. So that's kind of like what it
Mhm.
is.
Cool. Um, yeah. So one thing, maybe switching gears a slight bit. So we've talked about like what misophonia might be, and that kind of like I talked a little bit about childhood and self protection. We talked, and that kind of comes up in a lot of conversations that I have, and it comes up with some of the hypnosis stuff. I have to ask, and you don't have to say too much, but like around the time when you guys first started noticing misophonia, what was going on at home? What was going on in your lives? Do you remember anything that could have caused that child to be confused and basically look for ways to protect itself? And maybe starting with Tressi, if you want to answer that question.
Okay. My family took foster children, and
Mm-hmm.
it was a gift that my parents gave as good Christian people. And They were raising us that way, and we loved children. We all still do. We're all very kind and giving to others, very generous. But there were things that scared me about their situations because I would learn about things that I would have had no knowledge of, none. Um,
Mm,
yeah, that was scary for me. Yeah,
gotcha. Yeah. And
and
it's
also in school, I um, again very quiet, very reserved, very shy, not very outgoing, and I had this thing that I didn't know or understand, and I didn't want to lash out at anybody because I wanted them to like me, but yet I was in my turtle shell because I was shy and reserved. So it
mm-hmm,
further kept me stuck, you
mm-hmm,
know.
mm-hmm.
And so I don't know,
Yeah.
I had a nice childhood for the most part. It's not anything that really stands out other than that. And I don't have any regrets over our family having foster children. I'm very glad that we could help in that way. I chose differently as a parent myself. I chose that I would make my life's work about helping children
Mm-hmm.
versus having children in the home. And I think I chose that based upon how it affected me. But it wasn't altogether bad. And I don't want to say that there weren't a lot of them that just, parents needed a reprieve. They needed a little
Yeah.
bit of respite, and then kids would come to our home. But we had lots of children for different amounts of time, from an
Gotcha.
overnight to a weekend to months to years,
Gotcha.
and we had 56 of them from the time I was in second grade until I graduated. And I'd say about second, third grade more so is where I was talking about being at the dinner table, remembering how miserable that was, and that was
Yeah.
such an awful experience for me to eat with my family when it shouldn't have been, and I knew that.
Right.
So,
Right.
yeah, but there was always extras too. There was always extra people. So,
Yeah. So a lot of stuff going on, a lot of change. No,
yes,
maybe no big T trauma, and just want to put that on the record. But a lot of probably confusing signals and
yeah,
information that you were getting and stories that probably were not
yeah,
being fully explained to you. Um,
yes. And I had some when I was little. I'd had a fall down the stairs
mm-hmm,
and knocked my noggin. And my mom said, we did take you to the hospital, but they just kind of looked at you and didn't do anything and sent you
mm-hmm,
home. And
mm-hmm,
so I guess I kind of explored that whole post traumatic stress as well, is the
mm-hmm,
secondary stress that you can get from vicariously experiencing someone else's traumas.
mm-hmm.
But yeah,
No,
and
thanks for sharing that. Yeah.
I think I was maybe 2 or 3 when that happened. But
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
yeah, life, right?
Yeah,
Mhm.
no, exactly. We all experience different things, but
Yeah,
we don't necessarily all react the same way. And partly it's because
truth.
of that situation or something we were predisposed to. But it's
Right.
we're all experiments biologically, and so yeah, you never know how things are going to develop. I don't know, Brooklyn, if you want to maybe shed some light on or answer that question on your own childhood. People might be
Sure.
curious.
So
Yeah.
I personally don't feel like I know why I had misophonia, or I
Mm-hmm.
guess if I described it now, it'd be like a point 0.5 out of 5 or point 0.5 out of 10. So still have it, I guess. But
Yeah.
I don't know why. And I personally don't really, I don't feel like I need that answer. I know for
Yeah.
some people it can be really helpful. So, for example, I actually am working with a client where we could easily pinpoint it. When she was younger, they would like turn on the AC in her house and it'd be really cold and her ears were sensitive. So her ears would start to hurt. So she associated the sound of like the AC with pain in her ears, and then all these other sounds developed. And so it's like, well, of course, like, you experienced misophonia. That makes so much sense. And that was really helpful for us to talk about and kind of rewire that connection. I
Mm-hmm.
know for me, I feel like it started when I was a bit younger and I was always really sensitive. Like if I grew up today, I feel like my parents probably may have had me tested for autism. I had a lot of things that you would like pick from the spectrum, so I had a really difficult time like communicating my emotions. Like I remember I think I was like 14, 15, and I was in a therapy session that my mom joined in, and she was like crying, like expressing how challenging things had been between us and like with my misophonia and everything, and I was
Mm-hmm.
laughing because I was so uncomfortable. Like I just didn't know what to do. Like those things
Yeah.
used to be really, I'm like, I don't know what to do with these emotions. I don't know. And like
Yeah.
when I was younger, they had to cut off the edges of my socks where like the seam meets because like the sensation of it was frustrating. Tags in my shirts. I
Hmm.
couldn't wear jeans until like my freshman year of high school because of the sensory like issue that I had with it. So I was always a bit sensitive. And then I don't know if this is related at all. It could be, maybe not. I don't know. But when I was in third grade or around 9 years old, my dad was also in a pretty significant motorcycle accident where he almost
Mm.
lost his leg, and it completely transformed the way that our family functioned because he was not really mobile for a long time. And so we had to take care of him, and just the family dynamic totally changed, which
Hmm.
ironically now I use his motorcycle accident as a metaphor to support me in helping people with
Okay. Yeah.
misophonia.
Yeah.
But I'm sure that that played into it well. Is just our total, like our family dynamic totally changed when I was really young too.
Wow. And then you did mention like you you don't have a lot of memories before 19. Was that kind of an exaggeration or
No, I
okay,
just have a
okay.
really bad memory, and my
Okay.
mom does as well. Like she has no
Yeah.
idea what our first words are. She's forgotten a lot of stuff from our like I just have a very
Okay.
bad memory.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
didn't
yeah.
have like a horribly traumatic childhood. Like we had all
Hmm.
the things we needed, and our parents were really involved and all that stuff. But yeah, I don't. I just have a very bad memory.
Yeah, yeah. Cool. And yeah, so you mentioned other senses, and people listen to the podcast know that I was like, I think misophonia. I think sound is the hardest thing to block out if our brain is looking for some kind of a warning. So it doesn't surprise me that get misophonia, then it's the visuals as an
Hmm.
anticipation. Um, Tressi, misokinesia, your experience with that and other senses. I'm curious, did that all develop as well?
I think I was more focused on the mouth noises
Mm-hmm.
and just the footsteps and the movement and stuff. But yeah, the movement was the Misophonia. You know, my mom would fidget on her leg, and everyone has a nervous tick of some sort, don't we? We all have that.
Got the Jimmy legs, yeah.
Yeah, right. But
Yes.
she would do that, and I remember I just kind of put my hand over her hand, like stop. It's getting me. I don't. I guess that's all I can recall right
Yeah,
now.
yeah,
And I
yeah.
think it's good when you don't remember stuff because that means you're past it.
I'm just kidding. Did you find like any sensitivities to, or maybe it's a question for Brooklyn as well, but like
Mhm.
in your work with clients or Tracy, in your experience, does the misokinesia maybe go away as well around the same time in the same kind of way as misophonia?
I never really paid that much attention to the Misophonia.
Hmm.
To be quite
Okay.
honest with you, I I don't know how much that was part of it or not. I think just in my research, I just learned more about it and thought, oh, that's what that is.
Yeah, yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
okay. I just feel like I was a late bloomer in terms of figuring it all out, but I've now connected dots and um, the puzzle's complete and I get it. But
Oh, what about
I'm
the
really concerned.
yeah?
Oh, go ahead.
Well, no, I was going to ask because you did mention some other conditions that contributed to you. Sorry, I keep waving my hands. I'll stop doing that. You mentioned some of the other conditions that kind of led you to your low point, Tressi. Like, have you noticed
Mhm.
a kind of a general lift as well, or has it been more focused on the misophonia?
I've just had a lot of medicine changes, just going
Mm-hmm.
through menopause and Hashimoto's. I've just had a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think not having misophonia on top of it has helped, but I still had those. I just did. I have,
Mm-hmm.
it just lessened the list of things I was trying to deal with, right?
Yeah,
And that's always a blessing.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. No, that's great. Yeah, misophonia can definitely be this big cloud that
Mhm.
kind of like drains the energy. Well, and speaking of
Mhm.
that, I mean, HSPs, highly sensitive people, we feel drained. Is
Mhm.
that a term that Tracy, that you've seen? That you have you resonated with that? I'm
Oh,
assuming
definitely.
Brooklyn's going to be a yes
Most
as well.
definitely. So I just want to say that,
Yeah.
I feel like my other senses had to overcompensate for what wasn't working well. But I just even go back to my youth and I think about the light sensitivity, socks, confining clothes, itchy. I mean, it
Yeah.
was not just that bothered me. I mean, I could have a complete and total meltdown. Um, I think there's a spectrum there too.
Hmm.
Yeah.
But, and then serving kids in the school system as both a teacher and a school counselor, I recognize a lot of these things now. It's in hindsight because I'm no longer working professionally in those roles, but um, I definitely had an understanding for what they were experiencing. I
Yeah.
could relate. Yeah. I wanted to say
Yeah.
that my my book, Guided by True North, talks about advocating for this condition to be recognized as its own condition in the Diagnostic and Statisticals Manual of Mental Health
Hmm.
Disorders. I just feel like that's something that has to give. They keep wanting to categorize us with other things. And I think people may have a list, just like I have been dealing with the things that I've mentioned. And misophonia is just one more thing. But that doesn't mean that everybody that is a misophone has the same other conditions. I think it truly needs to be isolated and acknowledged.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of us are pushing towards that or would like to see that, or and are confused as to why it isn't the case yet.
Hmm.
I know it's like a every 10-year thing or something. So we're getting, yeah, I guess we're getting about, see, it flies by. I think I mentioned it during our call.
Yeah.
You kind of don't even realize it. But yeah, I'd love to kind of like obviously hear, maybe as we're wrapping up, we can talk about all the, we mentioned the book a bunch of times, Brooklyn, your work as well. We'll have the website and all that stuff in the notes. But maybe real quick, just kind of on the flip side, like, Brooklyn, you mentioned you get you got some pushback from the Facebook group. What did you learn about, like, how do you explain that? Like, I'm sure there's still people who might be, because there's all these different, there's the hypnosis stuff, there's all kinds of different modalities. How do you talk about that now? Like, what do you tell people, and how do you feel about, like, the I don't know, the pushback for certain modalities?
Oh gosh, that's a good question. And actually, it took me a while to get
Hmm.
comfortable with that. And I want to say too, this kind of touches on it, but I want to say too, like it's amazing that Tressi did put those books out there, because a lot of people, I've noticed from myself, my own experience growing up, and people that I work with, do not want people to know that they have misophonia, because people, even in the misophonia community, there's gatekeeping within it of like, oh, well, it's not bad enough. You don't have misophonia. You
Hmm.
wouldn't get it. That's something else. And then there's
Hmm.
also people who don't experience it and they're like, you're crazy. Like, I've seen comments on social media that are so keyboard warriors going at it, like I had an ad that I put out, and it's like, if you yelled at someone for the way that they chew, then you're my kind of person. And somebody wrote, if you're yelling at someone for the way that they chew, then you have a problem. And it's like,
Oh, I
okay,
see.
sir, this is not a useful comment. Like, I'm trying to help people here. So, or, people don't want others to know, because then people will make noises on purpose to like make them uncomfortable. People did
Gotcha.
that to me growing up.
Yep.
So the fact that you put those books out there and that you're willing to be a voice for that, I love that. And that's always what I wanted to do as well, because I never wanted people to know that I had it. And then once I got relief from it, that's when I felt comfortable sharing. Because I'm like, okay, people can't hold this power over me anymore. And also, I just see it differently. Instead of feeling like there's something wrong with me, it's like, oh, this is just the way that my brain was processing things. Like, everyone has something like that. In
Mhm.
terms of like the pushback in the Facebook group, I honestly am still hesitant to post in some of them, in one in particular, because there's always the skeptics that come running. And I've had people like accuse me of like sleazy marketing or just trying to make money or this and that. And that was really, really difficult for me to absorb, because I want to help people so badly. Like, I know
Hmm.
how miserable it is to live with misophonia, and I genuinely want to help as many people as I can. That's why I offer so much free stuff. That's why
Mhm.
I just try to do everything that I can, or just at least try to be a voice of like, there is hope. Even if it's not through me, if it's through another therapist or practitioner or another modality that I don't use, there are people out there experiencing relief. Like, if I can do it, someone who is super anxious, super depressed, if I can do that for myself, I truly believe anyone can do it. So I've
Mhm.
gotten to a place where it's like, at this point, I just don't really care if people are saying these things about me or if there is skepticism, because there was skepticism when I first posted, and Tressi saw through that and decided to work with me, and she's been able to experience some really incredible things.
I
So there may
surely
be,
have.
right, there may be some people who, you know, like I've said, they've tried things before. I can understand that skepticism. I really can. Like, they've tried many, many things and they don't work, and you're just protecting yourself from disappointment, right? And maybe there's even a desire to protect other people. So for me, I still get some of that pushback. Some people have even said, like, I never had misophonia in the first place. So I've gotten
It's an
some
odd
things like
thing
that.
to say. Yeah.
Yes, but for
Right.
me, it's worth it to post and try to put it out there. And sometimes I do have to market in weird ways. Like, I did a reel where I had my husband like eating Cheez-Its, and I pied him in the face because
Mm-hmm.
I want to get people's attention, because people can't get support or help if they don't even know I exist. So I've
Mm-hmm.
kind of learned, like, there's always going to be some of that, like, internet, social media trolling and skepticism and mean comments, but being able to help people is worth it, is worth more than any of that other stuff. Hopefully that kind of answered your
Yeah, yeah,
question.
of course. And so where should people go? Which website and URLs and social media?
Ooh, good question.
Because
So,
I'll put them in the notes, but in case people don't read, they can listen
yes.
to you. Yeah.
So my main Instagram is just my name, Brooklyn Dish,
Mm-hmm.
DISCH, but it'll be listed so people can find it.
Mm-hmm.
But also you can go to rewiremisophonia.com. That's like my main website, or brooklyndish.com. It all goes to the same place. But
Mm-hmm.
also, I encourage people to start with the free stuff. Like, if you don't know what coaching with me is like, before you give me any of your money, do the free stuff. So, like, Let's Ditch Misophonia on YouTube, I have a whole bunch of videos. I have EFT tutorials. I have a free PDF that you can download that walks you through the steps. That's on the website. And then if you want to keep going, then I have that self-paced program, which is less than $250. So I've really tried to make it as accessible as possible. And
Mm-hmm.
that will walk you through, you know, again, those steps. There's coaching sessions in there, the audios that Tressi talked about. There's workbooks, because obviously for a program, I have to make it more general, because I don't know every single person going through it. So those workbooks will help you personalize it for your experience specifically. There's so many resources in there. And then if you go through that and you're like, I want that one-on-one support from Brooklyn, you can then take the investment from the program and apply it to one-on-one coaching. So you don't have to buy
Gotcha. Oh,
both.
okay. Okay.
So I always encourage people, start with the free stuff, duh, because if you start getting relief from something that's free, why would you pay any
Right.
money? And then you can start to kind of move up as you feel necessary. So those are kind of the places to find the stuff that I do.
Cool. Yeah. No, super
Mm-hmm.
helpful. And yeah, maybe Tressi as well. Any kind of like, well, your URLs and kind of final thoughts.
Sure. So my author website is www.tressimitchell.com. And my books are sold in 4 different formats on Amazon, Kindle, Barnes and Noble. What am I missing?
Google?
Google. Yeah.
Okay. I
Apple.
just
Yeah.
read that recently, so it's top of mind.
Top of your head. Thank you. Yes. And I just really appreciate you having us on like this. I just really wanted to acknowledge Brooklyn. I am very grateful to her, and wanted others to know about the positive experience that I had working with her. And, you know, being one of her first ones and being open-minded was key. So if you're open-minded and you just want some improvement, maybe it doesn't go away completely, but if it improves your life at all, it's worth your effort. And it certainly was worth mine. And so I wanted this time to let Brooklyn shine.
Thank you for coming on. Thank you for reaching out. Misophonia is like, it's not even honestly a side project of a side. It's not even my main side project, so I usually don't reach out to people. But I definitely wanted to have Brooklyn on. And Tressi, I saw your book at somebody else's house, so I was like, oh, I should reach out. But yes, thanks for reaching out. This has been an amazing conversation that I know is going to enlighten a lot of people, and I look forward to having it out there. So yeah,
I appreciate you, Adele. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks again, Tressi and Brooklyn. It was great to finally chat. Everyone, please check out all the links in these show notes. If you liked this episode, don't forget to leave a quick rating or review wherever you listen to this show. You can hit me up by email at hello@misophoniapodcast.com or go to the website misophoniapodcast.com. It's even easier just to send a message on Instagram at misophoniapodcast. You can follow there, Misophonia Podcast. On Twitter, it's Misophonia Show, or X, I should say. And actually, we are now on Blue Sky as Misophonia Podcast. Support the show by visiting misophonia.shop. Theme music, as always, is by Moby. And until next week, wishing you peace and quiet.